Hey, everybody at Shit Talk Reviews. Welcome. My name's John. We have Derek and David in the house. And fellas, we're very lucky today. We have a powerhouse that's joining us on this call. This guy has had his hands in a metric shit ton of music over the last 35 years. He shows no signs of stopping. And on top of all the engineering, mixing, mastering, you name it, engineering work he does, he's also writing crusher riffs at present for the Barbarians of California. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he's Grammy nominated twice too. So Eric Stenman, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us for a minute, man.
Am I Grammy nominated twice?
Twice, buddy.
I don't think so.
Twice. That's my story, and that's what we're sticking with.
Wow, yeah. I see. I know a guy that really leans on the kind of almost nominated stuff, and I don't want to be that guy. So,
Fair enough.
I think I have one half-assed Grammy nomination. So anyways.
Hey, you know what? That's still one half-assed Grammy nomination more than most people.
There you go. True that.
Okay.
So kudos. Yeah. So the Barbarians of California, we have fallen head over heels on this record, man. It is fan-fucking-tastic. Thank you for putting it out. I know the story's kind of out there about how this came about, but for the folks that may not have heard yet, give us the brief synopsis of how the Barbarians of California emerged.
Sure, I will. First, let me say thank you for that, that start. This is still so new that anytime we hear people that know what they're talking about give it a thumbs up, it really resonates. Cool. I feel like not that many people have heard it yet, or I'm still just living my life and doing my little thing. And so I actually had a moment like this yesterday, and so they're still resonating, and I'm not jaded yet. So thank you. It's awesome. Really fun to work on this stuff in our little bubble. Pay a lot of attention to it, take it really seriously, but then you throw it out in the world and you just don't know, right? So it's still new enough that it's really fun to get positive feedback. So anyways, we'll start with that. But so how this started, the easiest story is that it started with me being a fan of heavy music forever, and I haven't been working with as much of it in the last, say, decade as I used to. And so maybe I felt a hunger for it, and I'm older now. I'm not as in tune with current, new music, new scenes. There may be great stuff happening that I haven't even picked up on yet, but I felt there was a kind of a hole in aggressive music that I was wishing for. And I thought, okay, maybe no one will ever hear these riffs, but I'm going to start just coming in the studio early and tackling a few ideas here and there. Just started compiling things. I'm pretty bashful when it comes to playing my music for people. And so I didn't know, how long the process would take before I would ever let anyone hear it. My wife had never heard anything. And, my day job, so to speak, is all things AWOLNATION. So I'm working with Aaron. He started to get some suspicions. He would walk in the control room and I'd hit the space bar real quick, right? And so he started getting suspicious. Like, what was that? That was something loud. Like, don't worry about it. So finally he pressured me. I played him 2 songs. He said, let me, I got an idea. Let me get on that. So he did a song. Next week, he did a second song. A couple of days later, he did a third song. He said, okay, dude, we have a band now. So this is a thing. So he was the, he kicked me in the ass to make it into okay, let's start to, take this seriously and see what all we have. And then we went from there and, just filled it out with, what we thought we needed to make a full album.
Can you tell us what the songs were, the first ones that grabbed him?
Yeah, the first song has been released. It's Where Are the Punks? That was the first instrumental that I played for him. Mm-hmm. The arrangement was slightly different, but that one is an instance where the basic idea was something that years ago I had laid out and just kind of sat on for a long time. And he heard that one, and that took a spark. And then I think the other one is a song that isn't released yet. It will be, I believe it's track 2 on the album. And that was the first one he actually did vocals on. So those are the first early days. I mean, I'm sitting in the room. He was sitting on the couch right there when I played it for him the first time. So
love it.
Yeah.
Well, they're slamming tracks. No, sir, I won't wear your jacket.
Yeah, that's the one. That was the first vocal. That was the first song we did vocals on. And so that was the first song that became kind of a real, fleshed out idea.
Yeah. Is it safe to say, sorry, Dave, is it safe to say that the snark factor within this group is as high as I perceive it to be?
It's probably even higher. Like there's so much sarcasm, and people say, "What's the meaning of this song?" And it's like shit talk reviews. We're just talking trash, and this was started during kind of the tail end of lockdowns and weirdness, and so this was also just kind of a reaction of like the world's gone a little crazy. Aaron and I were still working, and like just let's poke fun at the world and poke fun at people taking themselves too seriously. And yeah, the snark factors. You are absolutely correct to pick up on that.
There's a quote that's out there. It's from you. It says, "This album is the culmination of many, many hours spent chasing down a sound that we weren't currently hearing out in the world." Can you articulate the sound exactly that you were looking for? Because when I first listened to this record, I heard a culmination of a lot of different pieces of music that's out there in a really good way mixed together. And for me, it was the most fresh album that I've heard since Turnstiles Glow On.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm curious if you can articulate the sound in particular, what that is.
I mean, I'll point to your T-shirt as one of them. Sepultura. I can't understate the 3-album trilogy, right? Of Arise, Chaos AD, into Roots. Roots has a sound to it that the band came. Ross Robinson, I guess, brought that out of them as well. But so especially metal these days is so perfect. It's such a and I respect that. I respect the art of that and the care that people put into making the record sound so perfect. But we wanted, Roots is a little nasty around the edges, right? Yeah. And so we wanted to keep that, and our record isn't a full heavy metal record by any means. It's, dashes between punk and metal and whatever you want to say, but we want it to be fun. We love kind of the punk spirit of music being fun and being tongue in cheek, and so that's in there. And so, like I said, you guys may introduce me to some new band that they're like, oh, well, actually, they did this better than us. But, what I was just trying to establish was something that touched on 90s hardcore, touched on 90s metal, but had a new spin on it. And then what we realized is a lot of what we did, we took sounds that were, very not pop, but most of the songs are kind of a pop structure. It's a lot of verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, And so that just kind of came naturally to us. And we wanted you to be able to bob your head. We didn't want to get too math ever. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
It does. And I will tell you that I heard Drug Church, Sepultura, Turnstile, and Mastodon in a blender with punk at its core with this record. And I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but that's what I felt like I heard when I was driving down the road.
A little bit of Face to Face too from New York. One of my favorite bands.
Interesting. I actually used to work with Trevor from Face to Face, but
nice.
No, I didn't hear anything offensive in there, so I'll take that.
You'll take it.
Yeah,
good.
That's great.
Good.
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah.
Eric, I have a quick question. First of all, 2 thank yous. First, thank you to Derek for bringing this to me, and thank you to you, Eric. And Aaron, if you're listening, this is phenomenal music, and I really, really enjoyed it. I cannot wait for the album to come out. But John might have said this before, and I apologize in the beginning, but you do engineering, produce, and mixing. You've been a tour manager, and you've said 1,000 times you don't have that normal day job. So where does this fit in now with Barbarians as far as taking it on the road, touring? And, I saw that you guys are going to be at the Troubadour in October. So how's this going to fit into your life, and how's this going to go forward?
The quick answer is we don't know yet. We're real excited for the challenge of performing it live and doing justice by it. We've been rehearsing, and it's fun because it does have a new element to it in a band situation, and so the short answer, I guess, is that we'd love to see what opportunities come our way, and we do want to have a live entity that operates under this title, but we're just kind of taking it as it comes, and we're not putting pressure on ourselves, and we don't even know what the benchmarks are. We're just rolling with it, and as long as it's fun, we're up for it. The funny thing about one show, right, having one show on the books, is that we'll learn so much from that show. It's a big build up to one thing, and the next morning we'll wake up and go, what were we thinking? That part's way too slow. We can't do this song before that song. And, so it'll be a big learning curve just based off of that night. And
how much rehearsal time will go into that show? I mean, how much playing time will you guys do before the Troubadour?
You know, we're also, Aaron and I are fans of not over rehearsing. Like some bands, you know, practice 4 hours a night every night. I think you run the risk of something getting stale. You know, if you do it too many times and you know what to expect too much. So we're kind of doing a once or twice a week, couple hours here, couple hours there. And out of the 5 of us in the band, 4 of us have kids, you know, we got our other lives, you know, and so yeah, we're just, like I said, the emphasis is having fun, keeping it light enough to stay fresh and fun, but also, you know, we're taking it seriously and we don't want to, you know, give anybody a bummer that night. So, yeah.
So Derek
Cool.
asked the question about, you know, where this came from. And you said that you pulled a lot from 90s hardcore and 90s metal. Where did those genres live in your head when you were working on, you know, albums like, you know, with 7 Seconds and, you know, Dashboard Confessional, you know, MC Light? Where did that live when you were working on these very non-metal projects? Were you writing material back then that just you wrote it for yourself?
There's definitely plenty of years went by with the only time I picked up a guitar was to maybe fill out a chorus when I got something to mix, and I thought, oh, this guy should have done one more overdub, and you know, so I was kind of a stunt guitar player for a handful of years where I wasn't doing anything very creative, and so, but you know, when I did work, when my studio work took me more into pop or hip hop directions, I probably listened to even more metal on my off hours during that time as a balancing act, you know, and the reality is I've always had, you know, different feet in different genres. Like when I was in high school, my favorite 2 bands were Slayer and REM, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Those don't find much common ground. And, you know, then the splinter off that was Voivod. I was a huge Voivod fan.
Yeah.
You know, back then. So, yeah, it's always lived with me. And it's, like I said, it's something that I always wanted to give back to it. And I'd never really been in a metal band or a punk band. Some friends and I dabbled when I was 17 in kind of a straight edge hardcore thing that would never recorded, never released anything. And so it's always just been there. And it just felt funny. And now in middle age to make the most aggressive music I've ever, you know, been a part of, that also just seemed like a fun challenge.
Is that where the title, and now I'm just gnashing my teeth, comes from? Is that you?
No, that, I mean, you know, that's Aaron, but it's a sentiment we share, like where you can express aggression, right? You can, you know, try to explain how you're unhappy with the world or the current situation, but we're all just gnashing our teeth, right? Like, does it amount to anything? You know, are you going to inspire real change? Maybe not, and maybe that's okay. Maybe, you know, you take care of your friends and your family, and the rest of it is just gnashing your teeth and, like, you know, thinking you're going to have an effect on the world when, hey, everyone's got their own issues, right? Everyone's going on with their own day-to-day struggles.
Hey, I got a question for Eric real quick. And Eric, I apologize. You've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but I'm going to ask.
What's your favorite color?
The studio, is it still have the nostalgia that it did? Obviously, it's changed so much, right? It just drives me crazy to see non-talent people get on these AI things and all these stuff. They can create these music on apps and telephones now. Doesn't it just take away from the old days where everybody just came into a studio and played together? It's gotta, because you were there when particular time, and now you're here in new times. It's gotta drive you crazy at times.
David, you sound like a grandpa, man.
But no, there's so many parts to that question, because even just the process of listening to music and owning music now, you could lump that into that same question. So I absolutely miss a real studio, walking into it, you know, and there was a time when you would work a week here, a week there, and you're moving around, and that presented its own challenges, right? Because there's plenty of studios where you think you're just kicking ass and everything's sounding great. You got to your car and it just sounds like complete crap, right? Because you're not used to that room, or that room is just built really strangely. Right. So that, you know, I absolutely miss the lore of real studios and the smell of a real studio and the tape machine. You know, the tape machines would put off a smell. But part two to that answer, I'm so used to now working with a very limited setup and just making it work that I'm almost intimidated. If I had to switch gears and go back to working at, you know, world-class facilities with multiple rooms, there's a part of me that would be intimidated by it. And I think I would work a lot slower because when you give yourself so many options, you have consoles, you have multiple compressors behind you in the racks and different EQs, you can get really bogged down, with, all right, let's hear that guitar now through this amp and through this microphone. And then now let's switch the microphone to that. And then this preamp was, in many ways, limitations, I think, help you get things done and just commit to it. So this question is, I've asked myself this question in the last few years, now that I don't travel to many studios and 75% of the studios are gone now. They've turned into condos and that's such a bummer. And whether it's New York or LA or maybe Nashville still has more studios, I don't spend much time in Nashville, but yes, I do miss that. But then, fast forward to once the music's released, I do feel for kids today, and I'll sound like the old guy now, not having that physical component to owning music and how special it was. And when you went to Tower Records or whatever record store, you had to make a decision, right? You're holding 2 records or CDs or cassettes in your hand. Yeah. Like, well, this one has 12 songs. This one has 14, so maybe I should buy the one because I only have $20. So, I got to choose carefully here. Now it's almost hard to know what to even choose. If you have an hour to listen to music, what do you even sit down and point at? Because the whole world is there in front of us, and it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Eric, I say it all the time. I tell these guys all the time, there's no feeling back in the day when you were able to walk into a record store and pull out an album the first time and look at the art and look at the band members. It's just a shame that is gone, really. I mean, it's coming back a little bit, but
I'm challenging you 2 old farts. Yeah, that you, Eric, the guest, and David, because what I do is every week I sit down, I make time, I go into the Holics. I've been on every record label's mailing list for 25 years. I used to do a website that we did CD reviews. We type them up, and now we're doing this. But I listen to everything, and I will tell you, Eric, that when I stopped on Barbarians, I stopped. And I really listened to it because it happened with Turnstiles Flow On too. And the great records that come out every year, you will be stopped in your tracks and you're going to listen to it. And I'm telling you, this record, you're onto something. It's going to be awesome. But we do have the ability now to listen to a lot of music really fast and be able to hear it because of things like the Holics, which, our listeners aren't going to know what that is, but it's the media's way of being able to, listen to stuff before it comes out. And then even going on whatever music platform that you want to, you can fire through an album and you can even find the songs, fast forwarding, so on and so forth. So it's a great time to be a fan of music because you can find the really good bands and the cream still rises to the top.
Well, one thing I would say, and I've said this in another interview, but when the algorithms work, it's so awesome, right? Because what we would hope for in this new era is that, okay, you pick a song, when it ends, something comes up on autoplay afterwards, right? And when they nail it, that's a great way. It has happened to me before where I've heard brand new bands or bands that are new to me, and I thought, okay, the robots got it right that time, and they don't always, And so yes, and the upside too is all the music we loved when we were 16 is still there. Hopefully most of it is on streaming, whatever, along with everything that came out in 2023 and 2022 and, et cetera. So yeah, it's, another question was asked recently to me, is rock dead? And I said, no, I don't think rock has ever been dead, but it's all up to all of us to make sure that's not the case. Right. And to search out whatever we need to do. And if we are creating music or creating the artwork for the music, whatever, like we'll do our part as well. So,
well, I'm sure that to piggyback on what Derek was saying, I'm sure that when the album is going to catch, it's just that fucking good. I haven't been so enamored with a new record, well, in a while. I think the last one that really grabbed me and just floored me was War of Being by Tesseract, a progressive metal band. And when Derek sent this along, at that point, we just had the four that you guys had released, and Bazooka. The first 3 fucking notes, man. I was so hooked. And I might need to take a break because it has been on repeat now for a week. It's just so well done. The tones are so good. And I'd love to talk. Look, we could bore the shit out of these guys and our listeners by going down getting in the weeds about studio stuff and tone chasing. And I would love to do that with you.
Well, let me tell you one, speaking of those first three notes on that song, and speaking of recording studios and the glory days of the huge SSL consoles.
Yeah.
And the Neve, the beginning of that song is the complete opposite. I was sitting at my dining room table with some headphones on and my laptop, had a guitar plugged in through I think a Universal Audio Aero, not even the Apollo, like the cheaper Apollo, directed into an amp simulator. And I wrote that riff at my kitchen table or dining room table. And those guitar tracks, I think I added to them, but they are on the record. So like
beautiful,
the most unstudio, unprofessional. There's no tube amps glowing in the background, like So that look at that though, like that I had a spark of an idea. I'd been listening to Sleep, the band Sleep, and I thought I need a little this magic like sprinkled into these different batches of songs, and once again this was in the era of not knowing where they would ever go. But that's how that song started, and some of those tracks made it through all the way to the final version. And that was also another one that I played for Aaron, and he gravitated toward it and made it happen. So,
well, that's like you said, that speaks to the new style, studio environment. It's not always in a gorgeous, perfectly acoustic, room. It might be in your kitchen, but you're getting tones, and again, it's a credit to the software that's out there now. Like, do you recall what the amp sim was that you used for that? Because that tone is huge.
I want to say it's Native Instruments guitar rig. I think it is. Yeah, that's one I go back to a lot. It's not the fanciest or the coolest one, but it works for me. I make it work.
I meant to ask again. This is a bit of another in the weeds question, but this stuff fascinates me. Double tracked or quad tracked guitars on the album?
It's a variety. Sometimes double, sometimes 8. It's
nice.
There's no one answer to that. And then it got a little more complex once. So Zach, our other guitar player, he makes me look like a child. He's just a full shredder, full killer. And once he got more involved, he was a lot of fun because on the last couple songs where he was playing more, Aaron and I were just like using him almost as a acrobat, like try this, play that faster. Can you do that? Like, poor guy, like, and he could keep up with most of that. You know what I mean? So, and then you run into that dilemma of, do we both play the rhythm tracks, or do you kind of pick and choose who's nailing that part with the right feel? I've always heard Hetfield plays all the Metallica rhythm tracks. I don't know if that's really true.
Yeah, right.
But that's the lore, right? The studio lore. And I love that idea that he's just like, I got this, right? He's got that magical right hand, and so like, why would Kirk even try,
So doesn't Dave, but for other reasons.
Rim shot.
Hey, tell us about your relationship with Tim and how you got him in, because I mean, he's a pretty heavy hitter. And are you like the mayor of Malibu? Like, do you know everybody?
Well, Aaron would definitely classify more if we're going down that road. But Tim is someone that Aaron had met just with AWOLNATION playing festivals. They'd end up playing, Bonnaroo together. I don't know what, and they hung out backstage a couple times and just had a lot in common. They're similar age, similar, bunch of bands that they both listened to in their earlier years, and just hit it off. And so, a couple years ago, AWOLNATION did a covers album. That's something they had never done. And Tim sang on a song. And this was also during the kind of crazy COVID times. And so Tim recorded his offsite and just sent his tracks. But we just thought their voices sounded great together. And, we did Zoom calls and whatnot to kind of figure out our plan on that song. And all three of us just were having a blast just hanging out. And so when we were finishing up the Barbarian stuff, we always had Tim as, we liked what he did with Aaron on, I think they did a Midnight Oil cover, but we thought we'd love to crank up the aggression, pull a little bit of that out of Tim. And so always were hoping to make it happen on this record. And luckily, at the same time we were finishing up, Rise Against was in LA working on their album that's about to come out, I think. And so Tim was cool enough on a Sunday, his one day off from Rise Against, he drove out here, and same thing happened where we were having such a good time hanging out and just talking stories about old, shows we saw at the Metro or whatever in Chicago. And they were like, oh yeah, we got to get some work done, And so we got him on the mic. It was real easy. And yeah, that was just more of a relationship that Aaron had built up with him. And he, gravitated to that song, and he had fun doing it as well, I'd like to think.
And just for everybody's reference, it's Tim McIlrath from Rise Against that we're referencing, and he is on a track on the record as well.
We know you're fairly intertwined with AWOLNATION now, right? So the two-part question here. Did you first connect with those guys when you were at Red Bull Studios? And you are credited as playing guitar on the album, the most recent album. What does that mean as far as your, entanglement with the band? Are you against, like, as you said so well earlier, are you playing stunt guitar with AWOLNATION? Are you an AWOLNATION stunt guitarist?
I would say maybe on this one, I graduated up out of that, territory,
Nice.
and actually, did enough to get the credit,
Yeah.
So, this story is kind of out there as well, so I won't dwell on it. But I met Aaron when he was probably 17 or 18, and I think he calls it his second band, but it was his kind of first real band that recorded, but it was a hardcore band from the suburbs of LA. And so I met him back in 1998, and we made a record in 6 days, start to finish, recording and mixed, and we drifted apart. He did a couple other things. He's just always been making music. And then, yes, when I worked at Red Bull, the drink company at this point, they had a bunch of studios. I think they've downsized it, but they have an amazing studio in Santa Monica. And that was my home for about 9.5 years. But anyways, I had something come in on the calendar, and it was called AWOLNATION. And this was at the tail end of MySpace days. And so I Googled AWOLNATION, and their MySpace page came out, and it said AWOLNATION is Aaron Bruno. And I thought, Aaron Bruno from, Insurgents, and so he walked in the studio, and that was just how we reunited. And so that was before he had signed, because then Red Bull had a record label as well.
Mm-hmm.
And before he signed the deal with them, we're going to give him some studio time to, check out some new ideas and whatnot. So the first song we worked on that first day ended up being Not Your Fault, which is on the AWOLNATION's first album. And so that's just, we kind of hit the ground running there and haven't looked back. I've worked on everything he's done since then for, I think it's going on like 14 years now straight. So to answer this part two of that question, so on this new AWOLNATION record, we were making the Barbarians and AWOL back to back. Like we would just go a day here, a day there, just wherever the spark was. Right. And so by this point, he was trusting me a little more, as a player or whatnot. And so there would be times when he, on this new batch of songs, he would say, Aaron can play everything well enough, every instrument well enough to create a song, but sometimes he wants to bring in someone else just to kind of finish it out. And so in this case, he would maybe lay down the skeleton of a guitar idea and then say, he had new babies born. He had twin boys born around this time too. So he'd like have an emergency situation to go deal with, infant twins. And he'd say, try to make that sound better, and like, so I'd have his basic idea, and then I would just kind of fill it out more. And then he'd come back and he'd either like it or not. But like a lot of that stuff stuck on this record more so than anything in the past, I guess, with AWOL.
Gotcha.
Hey, Eric, kind of on the same topic. If I could grant you one wish to have any musician, dead or alive, who would you want in the studio with you for one day?
Let me refine that question, Dave. To play with or to record?
Both. Whatever, Eric. Both. If he wants to do somebody's album, play on somebody that impacts him enough that you'd want to spend the day in the studio with.
Gotcha.
Not to take the easy way out, I might say Max Cavalera. Go back to the Sepultura.
How about that?
Yeah,
we are huge fans of Max Cavalera.
the simplicity of his riffs, right? The two-note riffs, like especially in the Roots era. Somehow, right now, I forget if it's Instagram or X or Twitter. My algorithm is kind of nailing it on the old Sepultura videos. I keep getting these like festivals from '96. I got one this morning of them playing Attitude, the song Attitude. And I don't know if he still does it, but Max would play guitars with only 4 strings. He would just take off the higher strings, right? Which is such a cool idea, because like he's just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Let's cut out the crap, like limitations can be good once again. And so they were playing Attitude in this video that I was just mesmerized on my phone this morning. And so when I started these songs, like I said, I didn't know if anyone would ever hear them, but in my heart of hearts, my dream would have been to reach out to, starting with my friends, like that I know vocalists throughout the years, and maybe like I'd get, vocalist A to be on this song, vocalist B to be on this song. Mm-hmm. In my wildest imagination, I thought maybe one day I'd get Max on a song, right? So I'll just go ahead and throw it out there now. This is the first time I've really said that in public, but hey, yeah, Max,
that's awesome.
If Max came up with a 2-note bendy guitar riff and a vocal idea, I'll build an awesome track out of it. We'll take it the rest of the way.
That's great stuff, Eric. Thank you for sharing that. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, thanks for coaxing it out of me. Yeah, that's the key.
So Eric, we kind of know Max's wife, Gloria, and we'll float that idea.
Yes, we will.
Let's do it.
Maybe the third Go Ahead and Die record, which is very has some punk, in its core. You can work on that, but we'll work on that for you.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah, we'll tee it up. So I have to ask. We have a few listeners that I float, who we're interviewing to, and I'd be remiss to not ask about the Deftones and your time working with them. Any stories you can share that would be interesting that maybe people don't know about the Deftones and or just interesting for you from your time working with them?
Yeah. So look, I have Deftones in my catalog. I'm not going to ever take claim over. I haven't done so much studio work with them. My relationship with them was more so when we were late teens, early 20s growing up in Sacramento, and our bands, a couple different bands I was in played together with them in their earliest stages, and so I think the only studio thing I've ever done with them was a cover song that they've released a couple different times. They have a B-sides collection album that I actually saw they're just re-releasing now, so that's cool. And then they had done kind of a different version of that same album. So yeah, I go way back with those guys, but I don't ever want to sell myself as I'm not Terry Date. I'm not one of the Nick Raskulinecks or the guys that they've done real albums with. But no, I mean, watching those guys over the years continue with that core group, and the fact that they're bigger now than ever, it really warms my heart. Those guys, they deserve it. They've worked so hard and had so many ups and downs, and I just saw it. Once again, I saw this morning, they just added their second Forum show in Los Angeles. They just announced their next tour, and I saw they added a second LA Forum show, which is, cool. How cool is that? It's like a rock and roll, benchmark.
I can think of a great opening band for those shows.
Yeah.
No, I think they're already all dialed in on that. But no, we already, Abe, the drummer, I mailed a shirt up to him, a Barbarian shirt, and because they do that festival, the Dia Los Deftones, every year in San Diego. And I said, hey, Dia 2025. I'm just saying, So. Yeah.
Speaking of, not to get off track, but who did the graphic design work? Because it's fantastic.
So we have a couple heavy hitters there. The original logo, the bear skull with the Barbarians of California, that kind of almost looks like a biker gang logo.
Yeah.
That was a guy named Dave Torget. Dave is a Venice, I wouldn't call him graffiti artist, street artist. He kind of comes out of that world, but Dave is kind of the heir apparent to the Rick Griffin family in Dynasty. So Rick Griffin, did all the Grateful Dead and like Jimi Hendrix concert posters in the 60s and whatnot. Rick is no longer with us, but Dave kind of runs the estate. I don't want to speak. Hopefully, I'm saying this correctly. I don't know what the terminology they would use, but Dave, that logo is heavily influenced by the Rick Griffin style, and Dave got permission from Rick Griffin's wife, and the family was in on it. So it's kind of a cool thing there, and we love that it's so not hardcore, to go with it like a 60s kind of stoner, artist. We just
looks like Life is Good a little bit too.
Okay. Yeah. So that was that story. The album artwork is our other friend, Ryan Clark, who you may know from Demon Hunter. He's the lead singer. Yeah. He's also an amazing graphic artist who has I would say even a bigger career as a graphic designer than he does in music, but I've known him. He's also from Sacramento, and I recorded Training for Utopia, his old band, a few times way back when. And so we've stayed in touch with Ryan, and he was certainly my wish list if I could get anyone to do it. And we just gave him full reign over it. The artwork for the album cover, he did a pencil sketch of that, and one day sent us a iPhone photo of it and said, "What do you guys think of this?" And we just said, "Just chase it down, do your thing." And so we've been real lucky to have two very cool friends help us out, like on the graphic side of things.
Yeah, it's a great package.
Awesome. And I love just both images feel like curveballs to me because they're not obvious what genre. You know, that to me the album cover looks like a 90s surf company, like the artwork they would have had in a surf magazine or something. So it's fun. It's been fun.
Nice. Well, I'm going to bounce around a little bit here, and forgive me, but this is what we do. We're three idiots. You have served as a producer, an engineer, a back-end mixer, a mastering engineer. How easy is it for you to delineate between those roles? Because you've done it so many times, engineered this band, produced that band. Is it easy when you sit down and you're just serving as the engineer in the studio? Is it easy or difficult for you to step out of the producer role and just focus on good captures as opposed to helping the band or the artist craft their, product?
Well, so what I think the way Aaron would answer that question is that I'm even keeled almost to a fault, right? I'm never too high, never too low. And so I'm just kind of the steady, to me, something that's so important working with artists in the studio is just knowing when to speak up, when to shut up. Like so many times people are in the middle of a creative process and they don't need a producer, right? Then they need to get it to a certain point before they can try to then elevate it maybe by a collaboration, right? So it's all so intertwined. To ask, where does engineering stop? Where does production begin? And we've all had situations where you feel like, oh, maybe I should have been credited as a producer, but I'm only an engineer. I've just kind of thrown all that out the window. And like, I just love the creative process. I love getting to the finish line with music that didn't exist before or existed in someone's head or on their pocket recorder. Yeah. So I've done every level I've been in, there's been bands where I'm an assistant engineer on one record and then a full engineer or mixer on the next record. I just want to be an asset. Like, I think the reason that I've stuck around as long as I have is just be a problem solver, right? Don't create drama, don't create problems, just help things turn out better than they would have without you in the room.
Yeah. What hat do you like to wear the most?
I don't know. There's good and bad to all of it. Sometimes one thing I never want to do, and I see producers doing this, is producing, right? Like, I've seen so many times when like an idea is perfectly good and somebody comes in and just has to put their little stamp on it and change it. And sometimes they mess it up, right? But they, I wouldn't be the producer if I hadn't told them to slow that part down or cut that part in half. And maybe it was a bad idea, but they had to have their little stamp on it, right? So that's one, know when to shut up and know when to leave things alone, because it's not always going to be about you. And hopefully everyone working together will go further than any one person that's, too dead set on taking the lead.
Well, stepping back into the engineer side of it, one of the things, as soon as Aaron's vocals start, the first thing that popped into my head is, how on earth do you capture a singer like Aaron who can be super clean, crystalline clean and melodic 1 second and be completely fucking unhinged the next? What technical challenges does that pose for you?
That's the beauty of working with someone for so long. I can kind of quickly go one direction or the other. And he throws it at me quick sometimes, right? And the goal is to never have to do something again because the engineering side of it messed up, right? That happens to everyone. But certainly after you get a flow, a huge priority is to, if the take is there and the emotion is there, hopefully the scientific side of it was also, done, or at least done well enough. And one thing with Aaron is, he has a natural distortion pedal, and he'll even refer to it as that, and he said he's had fun making this Barbarians record and finding out that that distortion pedal's still there, and maybe it's even better than it was when he was 18, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's the beauty of working with an artist day in and day out is that, yeah, you can kind of anticipate each other's next move. Right. And so I think that's something we've accomplished.
Well, we hope that your life gets really complicated with this record, and all of a sudden there's demand for you to do like the summer festivals in Europe, and you have to go and get nominated for all these awards, and because it's a great record.
That's very sweet of you, and I am bracing myself for the first time we have to say no to some really cool opportunity because of everyone just having so much, so many different avenues going on simultaneously in their lives. But yeah, I mean, we should be so lucky to have those problems, right?
It'd be great.
Yeah. You're a lucky guy, Eric. We were just talking about this before you came on. I said, how great would it be to just go not to a normal job and go into the studio and work with musicians all day? And you have that life. You're living that life. I envy you, and it's awesome. And to take the time away and make music like you're doing with Barbarians, phenomenal, man. It says a lot. It says a lot about you. It's just phenomenal.
No, I'm very fortunate. And, I think one thing we can all be guilty of is not stopping to appreciate things, right? We're always, my whole life, I've been looking to that next thing. And, you get to one place and you're like, okay, we made this record, but now we got to make sure people hear this record. Or we got, in the old days, how do we make sure our CDs in the stores, right? Okay, it was great. We're on tour. We're in Tallahassee. We went to the record store and there's no CDs in store. What are we doing now? So yes, I agree completely. I'm a very fortunate person, and it hasn't been easy. And one question recently was, when did you know you would attain some level of success? And you stop and think, I don't know if I ever knew that, because you're always just struggling to get to the next thing. And working in music, there's plenty of time where it's feast or famine. 1 month you can't keep up with the work, and then later on, no one's calling, and you're just like kicking the tires and making seeing if you still know what you're doing.
This is the end, my friend. The end.
It seems to me that if you're fortunate enough to get to a point that if you decide, you know what, I just need to take a break for a couple of months or whatever, and it won't matter if I get the phone call for the next thing. That to me is success.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own definition for sure.
Yeah. Of course, making your own decisions, right? And I've definitely been guilty of not saying. I hate saying no. And sometimes I'll overextend myself maybe just because I don't want to say no to work, and I want to just keep things moving because I remember the times when there wasn't anything on the books.
Well, look, even the most fun occupation can turn into a job. And that it is what it is. So you have for a guy like me, I love the studio environment. I am not happier anywhere aside from hanging out, at home with my wife. I am not happier anywhere than in a studio. That it feels good. Like you said, the smells, coming out of a console, it's fantastic. So I'm very envious that your day-to-day job, even though it may turn into a grind occasionally, that's your gig. But with that said, what is your perfect day? Like start to finish. You get up in the morning. What are you doing? Is it making music? Is it in a studio? Is it out working on a Chevy in the backyard? What are you doing on your perfect day? So
tying back into how fortunate I am, if I won the Powerball, right, and I had, $900 million sitting in my bank account, many of my days wouldn't be so different, right? I would still be making music. I wouldn't kick my feet up, and I'd buy a few more guitars, and I'd have a few more fun toys. But a lot of what I do, I would still be doing, and maybe you pick and choose, and you shave a couple hours off here or there. You stop a little earlier to go catch the sunset, something. But no, my life wouldn't change much. And one thing I've learned through life, that the most important things are creative output, and friends and family, right? Physical possessions, none of that matters. I love just to create, and if you can create with friends, what is, I'm getting all touchy feely now, but what's better than that, right? And I've always respected people that can actually build physical things, whether it's carpenters or auto, like, you know, you said working on a 57 Chevy, I'd feel like such a cooler guy if I could actually open the hood of my car and fix things, right? You know, so my own version of that maybe is chasing down the sounds that someone has in their head for a piece of music that they'd, you know, love to get to the finish line, and I can help them get it there, you know?
Well, thank God for you and that mentality then.
Yeah.
People like us get to reap the benefits of what it is that makes you happy. And that's fucking great for,
well said,
hopefully it's as good for you as it is for the rest of us.
Well, yeah, all of us will work together.
Well, hopefully we can tee up Gloria and woo her.
Yeah. You know, I met Gloria in either 95 or 90. She would never remember me, but like I worked for a band that toured with Sepultura, and she came out to some of the shows, if not all the shows. She may have been traveling in their bus the whole time, but yeah. So yeah, tell her Eric from Albuquerque in 96.
We'll set it up. Max has told us several times now he wants to join this podcast, and by God, I'm going to hold her to it.
Yeah,
because he said it to me and John's face that he wants to join, not once but twice. So it's happening.
And maybe my face will just pop up in that lower corner. You know?
Of course, man.
If you want to join us on that interview, we'd love to have you. We'll definitely set that up, Eric. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
listen, man, we don't want to take up any more of your time. God knows you guys have enough stuff going on. But we very much appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to hang with us.
This was so much fun. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Eric, I just want to say thank you for coming on. Fabulous stuff, brother.
Anytime. Awesome. I'll come back on. This is fun. You guys are cool.
We're going to hold you to that, too.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Nice. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you,
have
Eric.
a good one. Thank you.